Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for House of Cards Season 4, Episodes 6 through 9. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of House of Cards Season 4. Since this is a Netflix series where the whole season was released at once, I'm reviewing the season in batches. This video is for Episodes 6 through 9. And at the point that I'm writing this review, I have not seen beyond Episode 9, so this video will not feature any spoilers past Episode 9. So if you haven't seen past Episode 9, this video is completely safe for you. So please do not post any spoilers in the comments below past Episode 9. However, there will be spoilers for you up to Episode 9, so if you haven't seen up to Episode 9, you may not want to watch this video, otherwise some things may be spoiled for you. So I mentioned in my review for episodes 1 through 5 that I was really impressed with Season 4 so far and thought it was extremely improved from Season 3. So with this next set of episodes, I still think it's improved from Season 3, but I wasn't as impressed with them as I was the first set of episodes. I think the show noticeably took a dip mid-season. However, this happens to a lot of shows, so I'm hoping that it will be able to pull itself together for its final set of episodes. That being said, I don't think these were bad episodes, not by any means. It just wasn't quite as exciting as the first set of episodes. So let me start with episode 6. This episode takes off with Frank still fighting for his life. He needs a liver transplant to survive, and Doug tries to manipulate the situation to make it happen. So he threatens the health secretary to change the priority of who gets the next available liver to prioritize Frank, which works. He gets the next available liver, but the guy who got bumped died because of it, which really bothered the health secretary, and she tried to make Doug feel guilty about it, but come on, this is Doug. Anyhow, throughout the episode, we see Frank having hallucinations where he sees Rousseau and Zoe Barnes, two people he killed, sort of fucking with him and threatening to kill him. And kind of literally fucking with him as well. It makes sense that he would see the two people he killed while he was close to death, although it's strange that Zoe appears as having short hair, but of course, this is because the actress cut her hair for another role, but at least they didn't try to give her a really horrible fake wig like they did in the Fan Four Stick movie. Anyway, they are really going out of their way to bring back all the main characters that appeared throughout the series. We saw a lot of people return, like Lucas, his boss, and several others like Raymond Tusk and Jackie Sharp, and so they use these dreams to bring back some dead characters as well. As of episode 9, we have yet to see Freddy. All they need to do is bring him back, and then they will see everyone. They even brought back the former president in a flashback. Anyway, Claire continues with her bid to solve the Russian crisis by getting them to negotiate with China. Vice President Bly refused to go to the conference himself and wants to send Kathy, but of course she's completely against the plan, so Claire doesn't trust her, so she convinces Donald to let her go as well. And indeed, Petrov refuses to deal with Kathy, and so Claire manages to use her knowledge of him to manipulate him and ends up sealing the deal. Meanwhile, Heather Dunbar has to deal with the revelation that she met with Lucas right before he tried to assassinate Frank. The synopsis for the episode says Dunbar must choose between her campaign and her ethics, and she chooses her ethics, which, because this is House of Cards, means it's the wrong decision. Instead of trying to play people, she goes with the truth, which leads to her downfall, and teaches us once again that only liars and manipulators prosper in politics. So overall, this was a pretty exciting episode. Not perfect, but still the tension was high and it was pulled off very nicely. This is the episode where Frank finally realizes Claire's worth and that she was helpful to him throughout his career and he needs her. That's something he took for granted in the previous season. So in other words, it definitively ends this ridiculous storyline of the two of them being at odds. Thank God. I am loving Season 4. However, the first 6 episodes of the season kind of form like a mini-season. So this was the end of a distinct story arc, and the rest of the season has a slightly different feel to it. And as such, I think it was quite a satisfying conclusion. So my rating for episode 6 out of 10 is a 9. Excellent. Next is episode 7, where we switch gears and start off a new storyline where Frank has completely recovered and begins his new partnership with Claire, and with Dunbar dropping out, he now has to switch gears to focus on the general election against the Republican nominee Conway. So finally, House of Cards touches on some political issues as they introduce a fictional Islamic terrorist group called ICO, which very obviously is a stand-in for ISIS. And true to Republican form, Conway focuses on them rather than domestic issues. And then we get a storyline with Claire going after gun control laws after Frank got shot. As a strong gun control advocate myself, I have mixed feelings about the storyline, because the fact that Claire and Frank care nothing about gun control and are just using it for their own political purposes plays into those who against gun control stereotypes. But on the other hand, they rightfully portray the NRA as an organization that bullies everyone into doing their bidding, and on top of that, it rightfully points out how powerful lobbyists are in politics. And they also touch on the issue of the NSA spying about how Frank wants to use them in order to win an election, which is so logical that those in power would try to use a powerful tool like that for their own personal purposes. So as usual, House of Cards tries to remain politically neutral and makes points on both sides that both sides can agree and disagree with, but yeah, whatever. So Frank offers Donald Blythe the vice presidency, which at first shocked me, but then, he turned it down, and it made it obvious that Frank had no intention of making him the vice president. He somehow knew that he would turn it down. So he was just trying to manipulate the situation to get who he wants as vice president, which is a game he continues to play into the next several episodes. So we get to see what kind of adversary Conway is, and he's quite different than Dunbar. Dunbar was threatening to Frank because she was honest and less of an obvious deceptive politician that made her more popular with the people. But the moral of House of Cards is always honesty gets you nowhere, which is why Conway is a much more dangerous adversary, because he is shown as being just as deceptive and manipulative as Frank, as he takes Frank's attempts to take him down and spins it and into his own words in order to gain from it. And they're setting up an interesting chess game between two worthy opponents for the rest of the season, and I'm interested to see how it plays out. So my rating for this episode is an 8, extremely good. So next is episode 8, where the Democratic leadership tried to push a vice president candidate on Frank, so Frank comes up with what I would call an enormously elaborate plan to shake them from doing this by pretending to take this guy who is firmly in the pocket of the NRA and pretend he accepts him, while at the same time using the NRA to force him to refuse a position. So in other words, they care nothing about gun control and just use it as a political means to get what they want, which of course is what Frank always does. And I love how Frank and Claire team up in this episode to accomplish this scam together. This episode does a great job of showing how they team up and rely on each other's strengths in order to manipulate people. So by the end of the episode, they arrive at all their goals, and that is to get Kathy to run as his VP, which of course, as we later learn, that's only a step along the way to their ultimate goal of making Claire his VP. Now, so this was House of Cards that I missed in season 3. This is what they lost track of and got bogged down in Frank always losing and being a putt. Now we finally get the kick-ass master manipulator that Frank truly is, and that is what the show does best. So we get more scenes with Hammerschmidt investigating Lucas's claims that Frank killed Zoe Barnes and Rousseau, and I really hope that they take the storyline somewhere other than it just ruining Hammerschmidt's life, because that's what happens to everyone else who tried to investigate this, and I'm sorry, but that's gotten really old. So if they just do the same goddamn thing over again, I'm going to be pissed off and consider all of these scenes a colossal waste of time. So we'll just see. And gigantic sigh. They bring back that stupid writer guy from season 3, as Conway tries to use him to discredit Frank. Instead, he just uses that as leverage to get back into Frank and Claire's good graces. Sigh, I hate this character so much. Maybe he won't be as bad this time, but so far he bores me. I'm sure those of you who've watched ahead snickered at my last review when I said I was glad they didn't bring him back, but oh well. As I said, they're bringing back everyone this season. But overall, this episode was solid, but nothing spectacular, so my rating for episode 8 out of 10 is a 7. Very good. So, at last we come to episode 9, where we get the conflict between Frank and Conway in a far more direct way. So Conway tries to use a general that he got to resign in protest because Frank wasn't tough enough on Aiko to run as his VP candidate in order to exploit his weakness. Meanwhile, Frank tries to manipulate the situation by using the Democratic convention to get everyone to choose Claire as his VP while he pretends to campaign for Kathy. Although Kathy starts to get wind of this, so Frank tries to manipulate her into accepting Claire, and she pretends to accept, but later we find out in an epic reveal that she was lying, and behind the scenes joined forces with Conway to try to manipulate the vote to steal the Democratic presidency away from Frank, which doesn't strike me as a particularly realistic storyline, but it makes for a damned interesting television. It was great how Frank and Conway pretend to meet to discuss Aiko, but instead they spend the whole time playing video games and talking about BS. That's so funny. That's probably what does happen in real life. So we get some more BS with the stupid author guy, which I don't care about. And we get a side story with Doug trying to go after Leanne, which again I don't really care about. And then they tried to show Doug feeling guilty about the guy who died because they prioritized Frank's transplant line. I'm sorry, but after what Doug did to Rachel in season 3 finale, not only do I not feel the least bit sorry for him, I don't buy for a single second that he feels a tad bit guilty. I mean, really, fuck this guy. I so hope he dies soon. So the political manipulator in this episode was really interesting, but even that was a tad bit too long-winded in this particular episode. And although this episode did have a really interesting cliffhanger, it was too bogged down and a lot of uninteresting side plots, and it's starting to have that slow-paced season 3 feel to it. So overall, I'm getting a bit worried the direction that they're going in. So my rating for episode 9 is a 6. Good. So that's it for my review of House of Cards Season 4, Episodes 6 through 9. Be sure to check back here next week to catch my review of the final 4 episodes of House of Cards Season 4, Episodes 10 through 13. And be sure to check out my channel for many more videos on many other shows such as Game of Thrones, Star Trek, The Walking Dead, Vikings, Better Call Saul, and more. And make sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all that. And thanks a lot for watching.